You're listening to Gen XP. Let's talk games.
Welcome to the Talkback episode for our Season 1 for the Shattered World of Voar. It is sometime in January 2024 for us right now. As of right now, the last couple episodes haven't published, but we are a little bit further along, so we wanted to get together and, talk a little bit about how the season went, expectations, thoughts, what we would like to see the next time we visit back to Voar, maybe where we're going to go after this, and I'm going to give the guys chances to ask questions. If there's any questions that they have, I will answer what I can. There are some mysteries and secrets that are going to remain, so I might be a little bit more closed-lipped with some of those things. But yeah, welcome, guys.
First question.
Yeah.
Who's the main bad guy? No, I'm just...
Is there a secret that we don't know yet?
Absolutely, there are a number of secrets that you don't know yet, and I will say that there were a number of secrets that you were in close contact with that you did not explore. So they may or may not come back. Who knows? That's kind of how I guess it works. But the main bad guy, by the time this publishes, I think that the big bad or the big bad vibe will have been revealed. But yeah, so we've got essentially a race of bug-like creatures that devour the crystal that powers our world, the world of Voar, and that keeps all of the islands floating. Yeah. Oh, by the way, major spoilers if you haven't listened to the season yet. This is the wrong episode to start with. Go back and listen to the season, or not. Just listen for spoilers. It's up to you. But yeah, so you guys did discover some.
That's what my daughter would do.
Yeah.
She just listened to this episode.
Just to this one. Yeah.
She likes to watch movies or read books and go on the wiki page, and
we should be thorough then on talking points, so that when your daughter listens to this episode only, that she knows what's going on.
The question is, are you a god?
Not yet, right?
Getting there.
Right. The journey begins with a single step.
So if we go way back to the beginning of the season...
The correct answer is yes. Yes, I am a god.
Yeah. If we go back to the beginning of the season, just to bring you back there, when we started, the first episode was just an introduction for your character, Alan. How did you think that went? Do you remember?
It went good. Yeah. Derek is Derek. I think he's got a lot of growing up to do, but then again, he is a pixie, so how much is he going to grow up?
When you started playing in this season, at the beginning of it, did you have a gelled character concept in mind before you started, or did it gel after you began?
I still don't really have a character concept in mind. I mean, I have ideas of where I want him to go. Mm-hmm. Like, there's things that I wish I would have kind of touched more on, like the Tempest and studying it, but I really didn't have an opportunity to touch on those. You know, I've got all these notes on the Tempest that I never referenced at all, but then again, I really didn't research or do anything to use them.
Right.
So, and I think that that's going to be a big part of him next season. Is hopefully maybe he matures a little bit, but keeps that pixie fairy attitude, of a prank here or there on his buddy there.
Right. And then after that episode of introducing you and, finding the very injured dwarf, taking him into the city, and you ended up at the temple eventually, and then we moved into where we were introduced to your character, Ryan. Did you feel like, same question, like did you know your character before you started playing, or did that kind of gel? I know for me, every once in a while when I play, the character is loose on the page until I start being him or her, and then it kind of gels once I start playing.
I definitely had a concept for him. It's kind of difficult for me to play because I wanted to play him as a confident, possibly overconfident individual, which is I'm kind of lacking in that area. Plus, he's supposed to be very charismatic, and sometimes I'm not quite as eloquent as I believe he would be. I like even in that last speech, I stuttered, and I don't think he would have.
Right. It's funny
You're
because
growing.
yeah, playing a character with a high strength or dexterity or constitution is not hard. You can just say, I'm strong, I'm fast, I'm dexterous. Playing a character with one of the social or mental attributes as the high one requires a little bit of real... It requires quite a bit of effort, actually.
Yeah. Which I believe I was growing toward the end into the character.
Oh, I think by the end of the season, you had stepped very much more into character than at the beginning of the season. There was a number of moments at the end of the season where you... And I know you were doing it on purpose, but where Avo was being... What's the best way to describe this? He was being...
arrogant and kind of a
self-centered.
douche. And very self-centered.
Self-centered and arrogant, but not meaning it in a negative way.
Well, that's the whole thing with the concept for the character is that he has it in his head that he wants to be a hero. It's his destiny to be a hero. Mm. So he's doing everything that he believes a hero should do, but he's not necessarily doing it because he is benevolent. He's doing it because that's his destiny to be a hero.
He's not doing it because he thinks it's the right thing to do. He's doing it because that's what a hero would do.
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
He's playing the part without being the part.
That's exactly where I'm coming from with it.
Sounds to me like the making of a good villain.
Could be. Do you think that when we go back to Voar, so we do have once this publishes, we will have 19 episodes of Voar, and we're going to take a break from that, and we're going to do another game, and we'll figure that out. And we're going to come back to Voar, but when we come back to Voar, are you going to pursue, and this is so far in the future right now for us at this table, but do you think right this second that you're going to pursue that track still? Like Alan was saying, that Theric is going to maybe work on maturing a little bit, growing a little bit more learned, studying a little bit more while maintaining the Fae aspect. Do you see Avo maturing, or do you want to try to continue to ramp the trajectory that he's on?
Oh, I continue on ramping up the trajectory he's on.
Yeah.
That's what makes him interesting to me. I've never played a character like that before, and it's just an interesting concept for someone who's good, but not necessarily for the right reasons.
Right.
And he definitely wants to be good, but not really because he cares about people. Right. But because he thinks this is what I have to do to be a hero, and I'm gonna be a hero.
I haven't looked at your character sheet in a bit. What alignment is Avo?
I have written there goodly, but he doesn't have a specific alignment on the character sheet. Gotcha. Other than goodly.
Hey, that works.
Yep.
I like it. I like it a lot.
The two of you hooked back up as far as friendship goes in the library, and very quickly decided, all right, we're back together again. Let's strike out. I will say with it, I thought you'd spend much more time in the library in the city than you did. By the end of episode 2, you guys were out the door and heading out into the wilderness with no plan.
That's another aspect that I wanted to play into. I think I did a pretty good job of playing into that aspect of Avo's just devotion to the fact that the gods have a plan for him, so whatever he does is going to follow that trajectory of where he needs to go.
Will work out.
Yeah, so he's trusting in his own fate,
and
basically.
Theric was just alone for so long, and he was just happy to be with somebody, and if Avo wanted to go, then I had no problem going.
Yeah, so Theric had, we established pretty early on that Theric had no roots.
Right.
You were living in
Town
in shacks,
yeah.
basically shanties and shacks all over the place. And where we found you at the beginning of the season was not your house. It was just essentially a tent,
Yep.
or where you were staying that night. So I guess it wasn't as huge of a leap to think that Theric was like, sure, we can go wherever. And I get where you're coming from with Avo, just saying like, I'm tired of being in one place, and my destiny is not here, so it must be somewhere else. So I need to be somewhere else. But it did catch me off guard that you guys just. And then, funny enough, moving into the next part of the season, you happened to walk the right direction for what the hook was. So the hook, just to jump back a second, the hook for the beginning of the season was always going to be this map that was going to fall into your hands. I love, from a DM perspective, some of the classic tropes, and a good treasure map, I think, is like one of those tropes. As far as the way it played out, I don't know if we did the best service to it with a podcast, but I did make a custom map for it, two-sided with lots of little Easter eggs and clues, and we'll probably put that up on our probably on our YouTube channel, just so that people can look at it if they want to. But the hook was always going to be this map. I wasn't positive that that's where you were going to go. So I had a lot of other little alleys that I had kind of started to flesh out as far as where you might go. And then I'm always willing to lay down the railroad track as fast as I can if you go a random direction. But you happen to walk the right direction to get where this map was wanting you to be, which was interesting.
It was fate.
Yeah,
that's
fate.
the thing. The map is what did it. That was the thing. That was the sign that says, okay,
It was Avo's destiny.
What I mean is, there were a number of compass directions you could have left, and you went the right one in order to get to where that map was.
And again, see, it was Avo's destiny.
Right. And I have no problem from a DM perspective, especially with these types of games. These are not pre-written games. I write concepts, and I have a lot of NPCs built, and I've got motivations, and I know that there's a timeline of things that happen when your characters are not interacting with them. But as far as how your path goes, that's never predetermined by me. It's I've laid out some breadcrumbs, and if you follow them, cool, and if you don't, cool. But yeah, of all the compass directions you could have chose, you went the one that led you towards where the map wanted you to be in the first place. And then you ended up in the highlands. You found like the first set of ruins from the first folk. You camped in the mouth of the Colossus, and then later on, you found another one of the tropes that I like, that I guess I didn't realize is such a common trope for me: the creepy old lady in the woods. You found a creepy old lady in the woods that was serving tea.
You always have a creepy old lady in the woods.
Well, I think that there should be a creepy old lady in every woods, even in real life. I think if I walk out into the woods, I should eventually encounter a creepy old lady, because
it does always end up being interesting,
right? And they're not, like, as far as the trope goes, I don't have them always be villains or benevolent. They're typically just doing their own thing, and they have their own motivations and whims, and it's up to the players as to how they interact with them. But she gave you a few pointers, kind of got you on the right path. And then we had the first really painful moment of the season when you guys were washed away in a flash flood.
Lost everything. Well, actually, no, I just lost my weapons.
That was the learning experience of use your inspiration when you roll a 1 if you have it.
Right, yeah.
I mean, I was like, yeah, we're good.
I wasn't sure. So that was only our 4th episode, which for us was our 2nd recording day.
Yep.
And I wasn't sure there was going to be recording days after that, at least with those characters, because I wasn't sure you were going to live through that. I meant for it to be moderately dangerous, but the way your dice worked out, it made it...
That was the
extreme.
symphony of ones.
It made it extremely dangerous because both of your dice wanted you both to die.
Just eat.
At first, they came around.
You did eventually pull it out.
I mean, Avo came around. I probably would have died if it wasn't for Avo
Right.
saving me.
Right. Yeah, that was a rough go, and you did survive. You lost a little bit of equipment, but then shortly thereafter, you found the dungeon. The treasure map has to lead to some place, and in some games, it might lead to a temple. It might lead to a hidden island. This one led to a dungeon, and I feel you guys tell me. I feel that the design of the trap that I put in that dungeon did not play out as well as what I wanted it to. I think that the episode ended up being a little bit abbreviated, and I'm sure it was a little bit hard to listen to as far as to follow along, and I appreciate if anybody listened through it and followed along. I really appreciate if anybody was like, I want to know these colors. But what did you guys think of that? Like, was it too frustrating? Do you like traps in games? What are your thoughts on that?
I like traps. That was definitely frustrating. There was a lot of just it. At one point, it just kind of gave up on figuring it out and was more, all right, let's just stumble through this and take the damage kind of thing.
Right.
Which, at that point in time, then it's no longer any fun.
Right.
Speak for yourself. I didn't have a problem with it. There was a trap. What trap were you talking about?
You did have a good moment during the Room of Colors that you played in character where Avo questioned if this was a lesson.
Right.
Which was an interesting moment. But after the Room of Colors, which I'll work on traps when it comes to how we do traps, because I want it to be... We're planning on, in later seasons, doing some video. But whether we're doing video or not, we're still going to be publishing to Spotify, which I plan on doing strictly audio. But when we do traps, I want them to feel... as engaging as anything else when it comes to Theater of the Mind, and really our listeners are going to be doing Theater of the Mind right along with us to kind of see the scene. So I think that's something that I would like to work on. You found your way through the rest of the dungeon. There was like some magic, there was some frost. I will tell you, because you did clear the dungeon, that there was a rune that you stepped over, a rune in the room full of frost and mist, that had you triggered that rune, it would have summoned an ice mephit, which would have been quite a battle, especially considering that you didn't all have your regular weapons. But the ice mephit was the big bad of the dungeon, but you managed to avoid it with some skill checks, which was very nice. And I think that that's something that I really pushed, like, even though I knew that there was an ice mephit there and that's the big bad, I had no intention of making you fight him if you managed to find a way around him, and you did bypass it. You did end up getting into a fight with ooze and each other for a little bit about the proper way to handle that, which was entertaining. But a little disagreement on that.
Like the way I wanted to open the door.
I choose life.
Right.
I mean, I didn't want squash pixie for dinner. Or squash fairy.
So that was a small dungeon, but it got you the taste of a little bit of everything. A little bit of skill checks, some traps, a little bit of combat. You did come away with a few what I would call signature items from there that I think Theric took, just the signature items. The
flask and
yep.
the
Tempest jar and the clockwork lantern.
The lantern I dig. The Tempest jar is kind of cool though too. It's definitely got its uses, and I I've thought about using it a few times, but haven't.
Yeah, so when you say the Tempest Jar, if anybody hasn't quite got that part of it yet, it's essentially it's got two uses. One is you can open it and you can cast Fog Cloud, I believe, but the other one is if you throw it, it'll explode. But it's a single use.
But it also lets you cast Gust of Wind as a cantrip and advantage on Arcana checks.
Right.
So which is why, as far as I'm concerned, I'll never throw it.
Right. The throwing it is a last ditch effort because it's a big thing.
But
it was big when you got it. It'll scale smaller as you level up.
But you also put in there that if I fall or you know what I mean, take into account stuff like that. I fly, so that's not hopefully going to be a problem with me, but we'll see.
Yes, it is. It has the fragile tag, so if something significant happens to you, it has to make a saving throw. Or
Boom!
Yeah, it could explode. You're carrying around a fragile grenade that does a bunch of other things, which is nice. And yeah, the I can't remember what I called it, the specific name right this second. It's a clockwork canary and lantern, but it's a neat little thing. I really enjoy very simple, not powerful magical items.
Yep.
Little signature things that let you do something interesting without giving you a huge.
As far as the magic items that go we've had through the season, that definitely is the one that stands out as being a significant thing. It was a neat.
Well, it helped me immensely because I can see in the dark, and the fact that the canary gives me advantage on perception checks while he's out for up to 10 minutes a day is insanely cool, if you ask me.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, that's one of my quirks as a DM too. Is like I don't like being stingy with magic items. I don't want to do what we used to do when we were kids and do like what we used to call the Monty Hall game where everybody has everything. But at the same time, the really powerful magical items do unbalance the game, so it's kind of a give and take, which is why I end up making up these little weird things that'll give you like a bonus to this or advantage on this.
I think, a huge thing. Yeah, I really enjoyed them, and like I said, I got a lot of use out of them. They're very utility wise. They come in handy. Great, they give you a lot more value.
Good,
honestly.
Good. We'll talk about a different magic item that came into play, but it came into play much later in the game or in the season, but. After finishing the dungeon, it was very important for Avo to fix the statue and return because what we learned was it wasn't actually a dungeon; it was a abandoned temple. You set the statue correct, return the temple to its holy state, which cleared the rest of the threats and disarmed any traps, opened any doors. But then eventually you left and. We're starting to. Well, let me ask. You guys got back out into the upper world above the dungeon level, and you had what you came for, whatever the secrets of this dungeon and this map had led you to. In my head, I was thinking they're going to backtrack and head back to town now to find out what their next thing is, what the next step of what they're going to do is. But instead, what happened?
There were more marks on the map.
Right.
So we needed to go
explore the map.
Right. So, and that's when I was like, oh, so I built a giant map. Not a giant map. I built an overland map, and I wanted it to not look empty, so I added a lot of stuff to it, which I knew what all that stuff was. But I thought, if anything, you'll hit some of this on the way to the dungeon. And then you guys threw another curve for me. You came out of the dungeon and were like, well, now let's go look around. Which is
there's a town down here. Let's go check it out.
It's a very, to me, Skyrim level of decision to make. Like to come out and go, we did what we're doing. We did what we came to do. We could go back to town, but there's
again,
something over
what's
there.
this?
But again,
Right.
Theric is like, whatever. I'm not used to living in town anyway. Let's go check out what's down here. I've been living in the woods for a year.
Right. And I like that you threw the curve because I don't want to, I don't actually, as a DM, I don't want to know what you're going to do next. I like to have lots of plans and see what threads you pull. But you ended up hiking south. What's up?
You'd love to be me as a dungeon master then, because you guys always throw curveballs at me. They're like, no, this is not at all what I thought we were going to be doing.
I think that's every adventure, every team at some point. I mean, not all the time, especially not with Icewind Dale because it's kind of on rails. But you guys have thrown me a few curveballs on that.
Oh, I bet. Yeah, I bet. You had your first, we'll call it a group battle. Now we've been doing Theater of the Mind for this. This session of D&D, or this season, is different from our normal home games in that when did third edition come out? Like 2000, right?
Many years ago.
So 24 years-ish of us playing essentially on a battle grid. We didn't start out on a battle grid when we were kids.
Long enough for me to have forgotten what it was like to do Theater of the Mind.
Yeah. When we were kids, Theater of the Mind was our normal because we grew up in a place where miniatures were not as easily obtainable. Maps were just not I think that's how we learned it at the beginning, so we just carried it on until third edition.
That and earlier Dungeons and Dragons wasn't based around tactical fighting like the newer versions are.
True. The rule set was different. So for the last, it's going to sound really old, for the last roughly quarter of a century, we've been playing on a battle map, but we decided since we were doing a podcast and that no one could see that battle map, didn't make sense for us to use it, and we would go back to Theater of the Mind. And so we had the first combat where there were multiple combatants on each side, whereas you guys fought the kobolds from the snowy mountains to the north of where you currently were.
Abla's fault.
Right? Yeah. There was a little bit of a negotiation and then a combat, and you guys just steamrolled the kobolds, as you do with kobolds, especially kobolds that are out in the daytime. That didn't come as a surprise. It was mostly in there just as a slight hiccup. I wasn't sure if there was going to be a peaceful resolution, and I think that you were trying for it, Ryan, at one point, but I think that your last roll just went really poorly, if I recall correctly.
Yes.
Because fate is fickle.
Shortly thereafter, you arrived at the town of Pendleton, which was a strange abandoned town, though with freshly tilled fields. You made your way in, found that many of the buildings were boarded up, and started kind of looking around before triggering. You knew there was something going on with the well.
See, in the freshly tilled fields, though, didn't even occur to me that it was an abandoned town.
Didn't register to me.
With freshly tilled fields.
All that meant to me is like, okay, someone lives here.
Somebody was here at some point recently. I mean, they weren't...
Yeah. You triggered a zombie apocalypse in the town to come after you. Not an apocalypse. You triggered a wave of zombies to come shambling out and after you. And you learned that there was something in the well. You didn't know exactly what it was, but something weird in the well. Which led you to your meeting with Captain Fairfax, Quartermaster Hillman, and First Mate Devereaux of the airship The Lonely Horizon. How do you think that first meeting went? Did you expect it to go... Did you think it was going to turn violent, or did you think it was going to... What did you think?
I didn't know. I thought it could have gone either way, depending on how we reacted. I wanted to know what they wanted from me before really going either way.
Right.
I was assuming that as long as we kept our cool, we could keep it away from violence.
Good. And you did. I think that there was a moment where Theric antagonized First Mate Devereaux a little bit by stealing his manacles.
That's just Theric, though. He antagonizes everybody a little bit.
But that I don't think that animosity carried forward, really. I think that Devereaux let that go. You agreed to do a job for Captain Fairfax to sneak back in because he had lost a few people. He snuck back into Pendleton, and he really wanted something. He wanted two things: one thing out of the well, and one thing out of the main hall, the inn of the town.
Theric's first brush with death. That's what that was.
Yep. Theric went into the well and dropped a crowbar down the well onto the thing in the well. Abo ended up fencing with, I think, 3 or 4 zombies at one point.
I think there were 2.
There were 2 to start off with, and I thought there was more that were moving around.
Theric wasn't a zombie yet. There was more moving around.
Okay, and there were the ship was causing distraction, and then as Theric stole the thing from the well, the black stone, you got tagged with a harmful spell, made it into the building, and then you needed to get out the back of the building with the boarded up windows, and Theric last action heroed through the window and knocked himself into unconscious, and we got our first death saves of the campaign, which was entertaining. I think was that, you didn't make the death save. I think that you at that point, Ryan,
I healed him.
You had a paladin level, so you ended up using a lay on hands.
Yes.
Okay. So you brought him back. You guys made it onto the Lonely Horizon and off into the area you went. And then we had a little bit of in-game downtime where you joined the crew. You kind of got to know a few of the people that were on the ship. Theric found that there was a strange hidden door in the bottom of the ship, and you met, again, another creepy lady.
Part 2.
Yeah, she's not as old, and she's not the same one, but you met another woman that was a little different.
I think he's lying. I think she is the same one.
You could go back and find out, I suppose. But you met Madame Kraft in the basement of, not the basement, in the hull of the Lonely Horizon. Kind of learned your way around the airship, and then we're told, okay, and stop me if you guys have questions or comments or you want to interject anything, but just kind of going through the season as we know it. Then you were told, okay, we're going to head to the Song of Iron, which is
Pirate Bay.
When I said it, you guys didn't have a lot of questions about it. But yeah, it's essentially a pirate outpost.
But I mean, I didn't have any questions about it because we decided at that point to join the crew.
Mm-hmm.
So we decided to join the crew. So what am I going to say? No, I changed my mind. Leave me here. I mean,
you never know. You never know. But that was the place where Captain Fairfax felt that he was going to be able to sell the stone that was removed from the well. You arrived at the Song of Iron, and were told this is an extremely dangerous place. There is no quarter given. You can't win by being nice. You have to show aggression up front and to be on your guard. You accompanied Fairfax and the quartermaster to a tavern. There was
a scorpion.
Some speed shopping that happened in the middle of that. But
I was just throwing money away.
There was ended up being a confrontation with Abo and one of the locals. Mm-hmm. I think you got your nose turned during that episode because you rolled a nat 20 on persuasion, and it didn't change his mind. Do you have any thoughts on that today? You still annoyed by it?
Yeah, but it's. I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah. I will say, had that guy survived, I was planning as we were going. So like I knew going into the bump when somebody bumped into you, and I figured at some point somebody would, like, I was like, if they both go to the bar and they don't sit down, which you paid attention when the captain told you not to stay on your feet, so you didn't sit down. That was a trap that would have got you into something else. But you stayed on your feet. I was like, if they stay on their feet, I am going to have somebody bump into them just to cause some conflict and see how that plays out. But I knew going into it that there was no nice way out of it. So I figured, like, if you used intimidation, if you bloodied him and then broke the combat, that I would let it go. But with you rolling a nat 20 on persuasion, I did want to figure out a way to reward it. So at mid-battle as we were going, I was like, I wonder, okay, if this guy survives, and you tried to not force this. Like, you tried everything within your power to be nice about this. How does this guy go on from here? Like, what is the rest of this guy's life? And I was going to have, if he survived, something happen where he would essentially not be your follower, but he would feel like he owed you something. But after that, you learned a little bit about the reason why the bar was called the Pit. There was a underground fighting pit below it, and there was a giant scorpion down there, which the bartender... I purposely pushed Theric's buttons a little bit by calling him too small and whatnot to see if you were going to go down and make some poor decisions. Because,
hey, I almost did. Theric thought about it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think that's one of the things as a DM, what you can do is it's just about getting people to spend some of their resources, you know.
It was tough. I was on the fence.
Yeah. Yeah. But you decided not to fight the scorpion.
Idea.
And
Me.
Avo, I don't know if Avo would have been able to see.
beat up at
Yeah.
that point.
That's
That
all
fight
right, though.
actually went more rough than I thought it was going to. But afterwards, you ended up in a chase sequence through the alleyways of the Song of Iron as you back to the Lonely Horizon.
It's a good thing I didn't get in a fight with a scorpion since I took a crossbow bolt to the shoulder.
True. You split up. Theric used some magic to disguise himself. Avo made it back to the ship. Theric ended up taking a little bit of damage both from the people that were chasing him as well as from his own crew by not dropping...
Friendly fire.
Yeah, by not dropping that disguise quick enough. And then you guys made it back to the ship, and then off into the air you went. Being hotly pursued by bat riders while the ship was on fire. So, what did you guys think of that battle? As far
That
as
was fun.
that, I was trying to design a multi-tiered battle where there wasn't just there was also the ship was on fire.
No, that
Yep.
yeah, that battle was great. I fought fire pretty much the entire battle. I don't think I cast one combat spell. I don't think I fought at all, honestly.
I don't remember if you did or not. I don't think you did. I think you're right. I think you mostly fought the fire. And I wanted there to be not what I would call multiple win conditions, but multiple ways that things could have gone. So I knew that if one of them made it to Captain Fairfax and hit Fairfax, that was going to cause what I would have called turbulence, because he would have had trouble controlling the ship if he was getting hit. And I knew that the fire was going to climb at a certain rate and it was going to grow, and I was making all sorts of rolls to make sure that it felt like there was multiple things that you guys needed to manage, and hopefully it was...
No, that was definitely a very interesting
Good.
situation in
Good.
combat.
You won out in the end. That was another thing. So this threw me for a total loop because Theric didn't fight, but he did charm a bat.
Right?
You had a giant bat fully within your good graces and were talking to him.
Mm-hmm.
And in my head I was like, there's no keep this bat, and now you have a giant bat that you can ride around on. But yeah, you didn't.
Nope. Why do I need
I
a
was
bat
about to
to
say,
ride around?
what does he need
I
a
can
bat
fly.
Right, I know. The bat can carry quite a bit more. We talked a little bit about that, but yeah. So I thought you'd be keeping the bat. At that point, I was like, but it all happened so quickly that whole sequence was over, and then I was like, wow, I don't know how that would have massively changed things.
But again, to me, it was more like, would there be nice for him to have a companion? That's what he wants. But at the same time, Theric is like, well, okay, go back home, live your life. See you later.
Sure.
Bye-bye.
After dealing with the Bat Rider pirates from the Song of Iron and the fire, the Lonely Horizon was pretty beat up. You had a little bit of time to kind of rest and recuperate while the ship looked someplace to make port and repair, and a little bit less than a day later, in
That
game,
was their second brush with death.
which
Getting
one?
back on the ship.
Yes. When you when you were making it back to the ship, Quartermaster Hillman shot you because you were disguised and running just in front of the firebombers.
But I made it back onto the ship and got hit by a hatchet.
You did. You made it back and were severely injured, and then a hatchet hit you, and you went into our second set of death saves for the campaign.
Yes.
In fact, Avo never did death saves, did
He
you?
didn't, but he got really close on a couple of occasions.
Yeah. For this season, at least. You ended up finding I was calling Misty Pine Island. You found an uncharted island. You laid...
My owl died on the island.
Yeah,
He was
you
here
made...
for a second. Then he was gone.
Landfall. Yes.
You can...
Ked summoned is familiar at this point. And then as soon as you made landfall, Alan, you sent your owl out to scout, and it just, boom, dead in the forest somewhere. That episode, by the way, I named it Fearful Symmetry, and I named the episodes well after we play them, but that's just a reference to the poem, the tiger burning bright thing, because I knew that there were a number of not tigers but black panthers, or as I called them in the stream, and I don't know why I used the word puma, but it's the right word.
Hey,
I just don't like it. They're black panthers. You had made friends with a couple of the crew by this point, enough that they were willing to cover for you when the two of you decided to strike out into the forest and see what happened to your owl, as well as maybe look for more resources. You were asked to find specifically something to help repair the ship, and you found like a clue, but you need to go look for more.
And water. We were looking for water.
Yep. Repair materials and water. So into the forest you go. You're accosted by a panther fairly quickly, but then you deal with that, chase it off, and then find a waterfall. You climb to the top of this spire-like island, and you find a waterfall with clear water and a tunnel behind it. And then there was a little bit of back and forth between the two of you. Like, you go back and ask for help, and then...
I'm pretty sure I pissed Avo off when I came back.
Right. So you went...
What the fuck?
And then you went halfway, and you came back, and you're like, that's too much. And then Avo was like, no, you gotta go. You talked to the captain, and then you brought this. This blew my mind too. In no way did I think this was going to happen. That you were going to bring other people to this cave. So I thought, okay, if they go in and they find the cave, and by the way, where we're leading up to, none of this was set in stone either. I was like, they land on the island. If they come up with a different way, like I thought, well, maybe you'll chop down some trees, you'll make sap, like you'll burn some trees and make pitch. I don't know. You guys could figure it out. I had a lot of ways that I could imagine it, and I thought if they do find the cave, great. The two of them will probably figure it out in the cave and find some of the resources that they need. The shred in my mind that was like, they're going to find the cave, they're going to go back and get people from the ship and bring them back to the cave. Total wrench in my gears, but it worked out because you brought 4 of the crew members up, and then the 6 of you descended down into this weird circular round smooth cave. You guys have any questions yet? Any interjections at this point?
Sounds good.
Yeah, good so far. As far as our recap goes, during the descent in, you didn't know why the cave was round and smooth. You do now, because we made it far enough down in, that you found this giant cave with a hive of these weird insect creatures and an umbra-like crystal, and these insect creatures that were eating away at the rock and using acid spit to smooth and carve and digest the bone and the earth of the island. You also learned that these creatures were mining away the rock around the umbra-like crystal to free it, which you all realized as you were underground that if that happened, it would just fall out of the sky. And I think that was Theric was inside of the main chamber when you realized that, and then
and the halflings got
the halflings dropped a bucket and got you caught.
Good old halflings.
Yep.
But Theric held them off.
Cannibal halflings.
Theric held them off with the flashlight of death.
Yep.
Yep.
So then it was a chase sequence again, running out of the cavern or the tunnels, finding out that light,
Yep.
not like normal light creatures. You did manage to stem the tide for a little bit. Everybody got out of the cave, and then I had a chase sequence with some skill checks as you were trying to run through the forest before the sun went down, but trying to avoid panthers. At which point, one of the NPCs took a bad roll and went down. Avo. Now let's talk about that. Did Avo save Ranford? I said his name wrong for an entire episode. Did Avo save Ranford because it was the right thing to do, or had you?
Avo saved Ranford because that's what heroes do.
Because that's what heroes do. Yeah, that's what heroes do. You're the meme from Thor Ragnarok.
Sure.
So Avo saved Ranford because that's what heroes do. And I did a basically pulled an audible on rules, and I had you. I said if you're willing to blow all of your spell slots, that will. And I was kind of using that as the equivalent of like a divine intervention.
Mm-hmm.
Put as much as you can to put all of this effort into saving this person, and you did. You brought him back from the brink, and then got him back to the ship. There was a moment though, right before you made it back to the ship, before you broke the tree line, where I got real worried about Theric again. Because you got stuck.
Look,
you got stuck by the acid.
Let's do this the right way. Theric's the real hero of this story. Avo might be trying, but Theric's the one that keeps almost dying, saving lives.
Theric is the comedy relief. Avo is the main character.
According to Avo, I'm sure
exactly.
that's true.
That's exactly how it is.
Theric almost died.
You did get into a tight situation, but you all made it back to the ship. And the ship lifted off, and you had we had another, what I would have called quote unquote a downtime episode where you were resting up, talking to the crew.
Well, but it wasn't a long downtime because we had limited time. We just were waiting for the night to be over.
True, it wasn't a long downtime. I'm just saying that we definitely near the end of this season where the episode was for the most part Avo, Ryan's character, talking to Captain Fairfax and learning a little bit about his backstory, and that's where another signature magical weapon comes in. Late in the season, so I don't think there was a lot of flavor given to it in what time we had left to play in the season, but I think that going forward I could see it being much a bigger deal. But you were given a magical saber that basically, if you're willing to spend some of your limited resources to being the way characters work, you can do more, but you end up with less rebound. And Theric went and basically did mushrooms with the lady in the basement,
Trippy.
that allowed you to focus beyond normal means, and you learned a lot about these.
So are you saying drugs are good? Is that the message that you're...
Some drugs are good. Some drugs are very good. Like, I think penicillin has pretty much done the job of saying how good it is. But...
Are we endorsing mushrooms, I guess?
I am not endorsing anything unless I get paid for it, I guess. Like, if you want to talk... Like, if anybody wants to talk about endorsements, you can reach out to us. I'm very happy to field some endorsement calls. You learned a little bit about the bug-like creatures, that they were created by the big evil god who is locked away and not a threat, but for some reason he created these creatures, which is unusual for him.
Well, but I mean, you say it's unusual for him, but I don't think it is, because he created the creatures with the purpose of fulfilling what he wants them to fulfill, which is destroying things.
Right.
And they definitely destroy things.
The reason I say it was unusual is because during your research,
Right, he
you
doesn't-
realized he had never created
Anything before. He always
Yeah.
destroyed things. But
Right.
he wised up and said, well, if I have minions to destroy things, I can do it that much faster.
Maybe, and that look into going forward. But the conversation with Captain Fairfax, the research session with Madame Kraft was cut short or ended when you heard the cracking and the exploding of the island. You all rushed up to the deck of the ship. You got to watch an island fall out of the sky, which for your characters in game, I imagine would feel very apocalyptic. Like knowing that you live on this world where the islands float. Even like seeing islands fall out of the sky from any inhabitant of this world should fill them with absolute dread. I can maybe a little bit less dread from somebody who can fly, but still dread.
But we're on an airship. I mean, the island can fall. We were all right as long as you got an airship
True.
underneath it. So what it made me think is, I need an airship.
I imagine though, like if I lived in that world, if I was in that world and I
Right.
watched an island fall, the next time I was on an island,
I'd be looking around. Are there any bugs?
or if I went inside any place, like to be outside on an island. But when so what I was trying to do, and I don't know if it came across as well, when you guys were in the caverns and you saw the crystal nearing its being free, I really thought like I feel terrifying.
Ominous.
Because the idea that even Theric, who can fly, if that island fell right then,
But it
you're
was,
dead.
because if I remember correctly, as soon as we noticed that, we were like, we gotta go.
Yeah.
We gotta get out of here.
Yeah.
And we turned tailed and
Yep.
left.
Yep. So the island falls, cracks into pieces, and you realize the bugs are not escaping. They didn't have a plan for this either. Or maybe they did. You watch the bugs die along with the island, and that raised. But before we could address those, you were attacked.
We were attacked.
Yep. Another airship had arrived, snuck up on you in the wee hours of the night, and they swarmed the decks, and we had a major battle.
Theric saves the day again.
Theric did quite a bit
That
of work.
time, I'll give you credit for that time.
Theric did quite a bit of damage and work in that fight. Abo ended up fencing with, I think, the cat for a little bit.
And I had a lot of bad rolls.
You did have a lot of bad roll.
Fate.
And then
But-
as the fight was starting to swing in your direction, taken enough hits that you felt it was necessary to distance yourself,
Yes.
and you teleported to the other ship and then stabbed. So again, I wasn't sure how this fight was going to play out. I liked our potential things that could happen. This was not necessarily what I anticipated, but you teleported to the other ship and stabbed that pilot, and the ship went out of control. And I was like, and I had a bunch of rules already, like I had done like the custom rules on how do their ships work. What if you're not attuned to them? And there was a number of rolls, and even though you had rolled poorly early in the fight, you rolled really well.
The dice worked when I needed them to.
You
See,
rolled-
it was fate.
Yeah, you rolled really well. 'Cause
Not
otherwise,
saying a word.
The
Avo-
gods wanted Avo to have that ship.
Otherwise, Avo might have had a very different ending to the season if the rolls had gone differently on that ship. The fight ended.
He would have ridden into to his death.
Well, you had. I knew going into it that when that started, when you stabbed him, and I was like, okay, let's make some rolls. I knew that in the worst case scenario, you had the feather token, and if the ship fell, you could have jumped off and floated a little bit and had a chance that somebody could have rescued you.
By the look on his face, I'm getting that he didn't remember he had the feather
Oh, no.
token. It
No,
was
I
like,
remember that.
I'm not jumping off.
I'm just thinking, you still fall at a decent pace,
You do.
just not fast enough to kill you when you hit something.
But then the battle was over. Theric killed everybody, and Avo stole.
So the ship was lashed to the lonely horizon. You guys spent a little bit more time resting up, talking to Captain Fairfax, who basically let you know, we're going to be heading back to the port. We're going to be done adventuring for a little bit because people are retiring. I have to restaff. Ranford died during the fight.
Mhm. I had to think for a bit to reconcile that, because I had made it a point that it was Grace's will that allowed me to save him.
Yeah.
So I had to rationalize why he would die. But I think Avo would be good at rationalizing things to fit his own
To make them fit
goal.
the narrative.
Yeah.
Right. And I wondered how you guys felt about that. And before we get to because the next episode was like his funeral and all that. And a little bit of bonding with the crew. But I did wonder in the time between when we did that, because that was a break for us. We did the end of that fight. Ranford was dead. And then we took a week. And then our next session. I wondered during that week how you guys felt with that, about that, especially Ryan, because you had gone out of your way to make sure he lived through the escape from the island. And I was like, in my head, I was like, I wonder if I should have Sam's perspective maybe fudged that a little bit so he didn't die, just so that your time spent on the island meant more. I didn't want to make it you something.
The way it worked out, though, I think it worked out perfectly.
So do I. So when we skip forward to that next week when we had the session where we did his funeral, you had written a whole speech.
Yeah.
Like a eulogy.
Yeah.
Which I think was the most Avo moment of the whole season. And it took everything I had not to laugh in the second half of your speech, because the first half of your speech was very heartfelt and would have belonged at anyone's funeral. And then the second half of your speech was like, and he died so that I would know about this. And like you made it about yourself, which is what Avo would do. That was peak Avo at that speech. So
I was pretty proud of that.
it was so we wrap the season as you return to where you started at in Nova Sona, the first city where you started. You have your own ship. The two of you have some significant resources, not a huge amount, but you've got enough to get you started. You have met what looks to be a big bad, a definite threat to the world. You know some clues about where to find more of them based on research. And that's where we end season 1, which I think was a nice bookend for the season as far as telling the first activist story. What do you guys think?
I think it worked out perfect. I mean, I think you're absolutely right. It ended at a perfect spot for it to end.
Yeah.
With a lot of promise going forward, a lot of different paths to take, but nothing set in stone, but there is definitely a path.
Sure. Did you have fun?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Good. And when we go back to this, we're definitely going to go back to it. I do want to tell the story. When we started Voar, the idea was to tell a story from the beginning of what D&D is considered to the end of what D&D is considered. So really we're talking levels 1 through 20. We ended as you guys are level 5. Mm-hmm. So and I know that like if you do the math, that's a quarter of the way through, but it's not. Levels are much faster.
Yep. Well, the first,
Yeah. Really the first 8 levels are
7
or 8 levels are probably faster. So now at 5th level, I think you both have got to the point where like your character concepts that when we started in session 0 are starting to be realized. Like you're both multi-classed a few levels into the things that you wanted to be. You're both starting to get the things that you were looking for. And now I'm excited to find out where you want to go with this. Like, and I don't know. Like, I don't know if two of you are going to say, there's a threat to the world, we got to go chase it down, or if there's going to be like hey, I want to more, or I want to go look into the Shellback Mountains where my ancestors were from, because those were personal goals, but there's other things going on in the world, and I don't know how that's going to direct you, and it's entirely up to you guys. But I am excited to find out.
I definitely have some thoughts on where I want to go eventually when we circle back. I mean, Derek definitely has goals and where he wants to go. Studying the Tempest is definitely going to be a big part, but I also think that in studying the Tempest, I can help with the overall saving the world, because I think there's secrets in the Tempest
right.
to learn to help. That's what Derek thinks, at least. So,
yeah. Cool. And as far as like saying, so like you think that the research aspect and the becoming more learned is going to be a definite part of Theric's future.
Well, that's Theric's whole point when it comes down to it, is to amass knowledge and, you know, being a wizard and, you know, in order to scribes, he collects things. He wants to amass knowledge and, you know.
Mm-hmm. I'm not going to ask which direction you guys were going to go, or of the many directions.
I don't even know where we're going to go yet. I mean,
Right. Well, I mean, like, what I was just saying is, like, personal goals or more story and world-driven goals. I'm not going to ask because I'd rather that be a surprise for when we play next time, both for me and for listeners. Is there anything that you didn't get to do during this season that you would have liked to have been able to? Any skills you didn't get to use? Any type of fight or any achievement that your character was looking for that you wanted your character to have during the season, or any like? So one of the common things you hear is like there's roses and thorns. Roses are things that like, this is what I really liked. This is what I would have liked to have changed.
Theric had no direction, no concrete goals. He was just happy to be with somebody, and that's still, because really, realistically, if you think about it, sure, what, a month has gone by in game time, roughly, a little bit more.
About 2 months, yeah.
So that's still not a long time to somebody who's been alone for the last year, year and a half.
We are going to do a time skip a little bit of a time skip montage before we start the next season of Voar. What about Avo?
I think Avo firmly believes that he's following the right path to go where he needs to go. I mean, he's got that piece of the compass. Now he's got an airship.
Right.
He's got some direction to get what he wants to get. So he's just going to keep following it.
Be interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see which plays higher for Avo, because like in our whole discussion today, Avo has personal desires, and then on the other hand, here's what heroes do, and it'll be interesting to see how those, when they don't mesh up,
right?
Which do you do?
Not only that, I mean, he's also, I mean, he's got the whole goal to find his family home and reclaim it.
Well,
but who knows what the hell he's going to find when he gets there?
Right. That's what I mean by the personal desires.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. So the long-term motivations, something I was thinking about earlier. So Theric are basically excitement and wanderlust. You're looking for interesting things.
But at the end of the day, too, Theric's really trying to amass enough power to complete his goal, which, if we remember, Theric's original goal was to establish an embassy from the Feywild here. And he figures the only way he can do that is through adventuring.
Okay. So there's an underlying, like, I need this to get to this, but...
And learning his knowledge, you know, wanderlust, studying, tempest, things like that.
Yep, and Avo is on the hero's journey.
Yes.
That's his...
Another interesting concept, though, is you've made it a point that in this world, the gods live on one of these, which makes it completely possible for Avo to eventually meet the gods, which are the people that he's following, basically. And they say never meet your heroes. So his entire concept could change,
right,
if that were to actually ever happen.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, in this world, there is a island out there somewhere where the gods live. That no one knows where it is at the moment. But with the airship, you now have options to go places no one has ever been before. Cool. All right. Well, I'm glad you guys had fun with season 1 of Voar. Let's take a few minutes just to kind of talk about where we're going next. We wanted to provide a little bit of variety to the channel. We started off with a couple talk episodes, and then we did a couple Blades in the Dark episodes. We've done a whole season of D&D, and we are now going to be going into a season of Monster of the Week. Monster of the Week is a Powered by the Apocalypse game. What are you guys' thoughts on it so far? Like we've not played yet. We've not even done our session 0 yet. This is just a concept that we've been batting around. But what are your thoughts on the game system, on the general vibe? Any thoughts?
It sounds neat, but like I said, we haven't played it yet, so it's going to be, once again, taking a jump outside my comfort zone. But.
Right. It should be a tonal shift as well. I think that we've been playing D&D in what I would call like a serious high fantasy. And Monster of the Week, I think, works best as like a B movie. Like, you can't take it too seriously. Like, there should be comedy.
See, Theric could fit right in there.
A little bit, yeah. Theric could fit in. I'm excited for Monster of the Week. I'm excited for a Powered by the Apocalypse game just for the simplicity and streamlined rules. But I also like the tonal shift, or the... Not tonal. I like the shift. We're going to be going from a high fantasy world to an urban fantasy. Still fantasy, but providing a little bit of variety to the show, to the stream, is going to be hopefully entertaining and fun for us.
Should be cool. Like I said, I think I'm getting a little better at this.
I think we're all getting a little bit better at this.
I definitely do.
Comfortable. Yeah. Are you excited for Monster of the Week, Alan?
Well, I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I definitely kind of like the different vibe, the different setting. It's going to be interesting because I do like my, high fantasy D&D and magic, but it'll be interesting.
I'll tell you what, it just occurred to me. I'm going to put a survey on this episode about what people are as, what themes or what types of games. So, like, we've played high fantasy, we're going to be playing urban fantasy. There's superheroes, there's anthropomorphic animals that we've played, there's grimdark, there's steampunk, sci-fi, cyberpunk, space opera. I'm going to put a survey out just to see, what kind of stories people would like to hear. We want to tell all sorts of stories. And we are going to go back to Voar. We don't have a schedule set beyond Season 2 right now. This is still something that we're kind of getting used to running, but we're having fun doing it. And if anybody's listening and they want to participate in that survey, please let us know what you like. And any of our episodes, comment on them, tell us what you like, what you don't like. I'll read all the comments. I'll most likely respond to all the comments. And I think we're probably going to wrap there, unless you guys have anything last minute to add.
It's been a pleasure. I hope you've enjoyed this episode as much as we've enjoyed making it. These episodes.
Nah, I hope you hated it.
One way or another, as long as you listen to it, that's what matters, right? All right, well, thanks for joining us, and we look forward to telling more stories next season.
This has been Gen XP. Thanks for listening. Catch you next week.